an explanation of the automated cataloging input system in the Copyright Office Cataloging Division, Library of Congress, December 5, 1979. The current system in use in the Copyright Office Cataloging Division, known as COPIX 2, is an outgrowth and refinement of the earlier automation efforts in the division. In 1972, the Cataloging Division began automation with the entry of sound recording registrations via teletype typewriter terminals. During 1974, CRT terminals were phased into the division for the input of all pre-1978 classes of registrations except periodicals, Class B, and documents. In late 1975 and early 1976, the input of periodicals was added to the other registration classes. During 1977, the then Bibliographic Systems Office and the Cataloging Division developed a new cataloging system to accommodate registrations which would be received under the new copyright statute effective January 1, 1978. The COPIX 2 system is capable of handling the input for all types of material received for registration or recordation in the Copyright Office. As will be explained in detail later, the division receives three basic types of material: serials, documents, and monographs. For each of these basic types of material, a separate input subsystem has been created in COPIX 2. The three subsystems are designed by the type of material entered, that is, a serial subsystem, document subsystem, and a monograph subsystem. Each cataloger and reviser in the cataloging division has a CRT, cathode ray tube, terminal. The terminal is simply a typewriter keyboard with a television screen. The individual inputs data directly on the screen in the same manner one would when using a typewriter, but the terminal is a much more flexible machine than a typewriter. For example, to correct, if we have data like the little brown fox, in which I've made two mistakes, I can back up, insert a character, or move over and key over an incorrect character. This allows the cataloger a much easier facility in inputting information. This terminal communicates directly with the library's main computer in the Thomas Jefferson Building. We will now have a brief explanation of International Standard Book Description.
Hi, I'm Linda Fox. The revised cataloging rules, which were implemented in early 1978, are a modified version of the second edition of the Anglo-American Cataloging Rules, or AACR2. These rules use ISBD, or International Standard Bibliographic Description. This is a recommended international standard for the communication of bibliographic information. The ISBD specifies the elements or parts which comprise a description, the order in which these elements are presented, and how they should be punctuated. The objectives of ISBD are to make records from different sources interchangeable, to facilitate interpretation of records in other languages, and to ease conversion into machine-readable form. The elements in their order include title proper, statement of responsibility, edition statement, imprint, physical description, series, and notes. The ISBD is combined within each entry with certain facts pertaining to the copyright claim to form the copyright cataloging record.
I'm Mary Ann McFarland, and I'm going to explain the monograph subsystem. A monographic catalog entry, as opposed to a serial entry, forms a separate unit for each copyright registration. Since each record is unique, each one is identified with a unique number assigned to the registration when it is processed through the office. Thus, to initiate a monograph, the cataloger keys in the transaction code add followed by the number stamped on the deposit copy and accompanying application. The system then responds by supplying the first screen load of the new record. At this point, the record is automatically linked to the initials of the cataloger initiating the transaction, as well as the current date. The initials will remain with the entry until it is processed through revision, at which point only the reviser's initials will remain. Along the left side of the screen appears a set of 4-letter mnemonic prompts, each signaling the beginning of a data field. Not all of these data fields will necessarily be filled for a given entry. However, certain fields are required and are tagged as such to the left of the prompt. Besides the obvious required data such as title, certain data pertinent to the legal claim to copyright are also required. Until the required fields are filled, the record cannot be stored in the system. Let's return to the top of the screen. Ordinarily, the cataloger would begin by confirming the number of the new record. If this step is omitted, the system will send back a message requesting confirmation before accepting the record. The first field is not actually a data field, but a space for messages between catalogers and revisers explaining corrections, citing the authority for a decision, and so forth. The message will not appear in the final output. So the point where the cataloger ordinarily begins to input data is the title field. As you see, this was one of our required fields that we had to fill in. Both the deposit copy and the copyright application are sources of data for the catalog entry. As a consequence, the cataloger must compare them before choosing the most accurate and complete data elements. As an example, since we generally don't establish authors, the form of name chosen for indexing should be what appears from the sources at hand to be the full legal form of the name. This may appear on either the copy, the application, or both. The braces surrounding the full form of the name are indicators that this is the form to be indexed, and the accent mark preceding the surname signals the beginning filing element. All key access points are indexed by the use of these and a few other special characters. In addition, each index term is tagged as to type. Title, author, claimant, or miscellaneous. In most cases, the system can automatically supply the correct tag according to the field in which the index term appears. The purpose of tagging is to narrow the scope of online searches in future retrieval. All of these tags and special characters are automatically deleted from the final output. There are a number of other automatic editing features built into the system. The most obvious is, of course, the conversion of data into paragraph format, with some of the standard ISBD punctuation supplied. The system is also capable of recognizing and returning for correction certain kinds of errors in the cataloging input, such as a single unpaired brace or an impossible registration date. Among the required fields is the ECIF, or Essential Computer Information field. The data entered here will not become part of the final entry, but rather is a cluster of codes that remains online to yield certain in-house facts about the copyright registration. Among these codes is one that shows in which part or parts of the printed catalog the entry is to appear, according to the nature of the material, literary, musical, or what have you. Without this code, the system is incapable of turning the screen input into printed output in the form of the catalog. Hence, it is a required field. Having filled in all the required fields and any others deemed essential to a bibliographic description of the work, the cataloger has several options for ending the transaction through the use of any one of a number of action keys. The basic method of ending most transactions is by pressing the Enter key. By this action, whatever option appears in the upper right-hand corner of the screen is automatically selected. Thus, if I end this transaction with the next option as shown, I am automatically supplied with a blank set of prompts for the next consecutively numbered record. However, if I want to use this entry as a model for the next consecutive one because of their close similarity, I can change my option from Next to Model by using one of the other action keys, thereby generating a duplicate record. Now, rather than key in the same data all over again, I can just make the requisite changes in the model entry. But if I have completed a batch of work and it's lunchtime, I can prevent the appearance of the next consecutive record while dispatching this record by using yet another key. Once stored in the system, the record is still accessible to the cataloger. Using the Catalog Update Transaction Code, CAT, I can call back my entry for proofreading at any time up until it goes through the revise function. However, the system is programmed to prevent anyone from actually revising his own work. And until a record is revised, the processing is incomplete. Now Dave will explain the serial subsystem.
The serial subsystem consists of a series of add-on records. That is, a basic record, the title of the periodical or serial, plus the bibliographic description, and finally the holdings, or the individual issues registered for copyright. When a title not previously entered into the system comes into the cataloging division, the cataloger enters the new title or sets up the base record with a transaction COST-ANT. The example that I'm using is a title Michigana. Once the cataloger has keyed in the title, they then store the title, and at the same time as it's storing the title, the system compares this with all previously entered titles to see if it's a possible duplicate title. Once it is confirmed that it is a new title to the system returns the data prompts to be filled in by the cataloger. The first prompt is a message prompt, and in this prompt, as in the Mono system, the cataloger puts whatever information they think is necessary for the reviser or the editor. The next field is a browse field. This field allows the cataloger to designate this as another title from one similar. For example, we may have two Michigana titles. One is an Eastern edition, one is a Western edition. If so, the cataloger will indicate that in this field. The next field is a single letter code for the frequency of the publication. Michigana is a quarterly, so I insert the character Q. The next field is for additional information concerning subtitle, authorship, etc. In this case, I do have an editor. As in the monograph subsystem, indexing is created by a series of delimiters or braces and grave accents. The next field is for an imprint statement. Following the imprint statement, we have a series statement. If the work is contained in a larger work, this would be indicated in this field. The next field is a bibliographic note field. In this case, I want to spell out the frequency of the entry, and it happens to be quarterly. The next field is for International Standard Serial Number. In this case, I do not have a number assigned to this work. Next field is copyright specific information such as an application author or an application title. Then we have additional fields in which to put index terms and cross-references. Finally, we begin our holdings field. The first holdings field is the claimant name or copyright owner's name. Once the cataloger has finished this part of the entry, they may store it. And then anyone else in the serial section may call it up to add additional records as they come in. Once the title's been stored, then it's re-accessed by an add function and a title key based on the title itself. It's a title 3111 key. In this case, we have a single word title, and in the title listing, it's the last one appearing, so I select that title, and it's now available for me to add the individual registration numbers. This shows that number 24 was registered and that we have the registration information. Once the cataloger has stored this, it may be called up again by anyone in the section to add additional holdings. Now we will look briefly at the document subsystem and the output of the copying system.
The document subsystem replaces a manual system which used typewriters, 4x6 multiple carbon forms, and 4x6 duplicated matte copies. A separate file was previously maintained for these cards in the card catalog. These are the forms, and this is what the card used to look like. Cards now produced by online processing are interfiled in the catalog with copyright registration cards. Documents record a variety of legal transactions, including transfers of copyright, notices of termination, identification of anonymous or pseudonymous authors, statements confirming that an author is still alive or has died, notices concerning copyright infringement, court actions, and statements identifying erroneous information in a copyright notice. Documents are microfilmed for reference purposes and assigned an identifying number consisting of volume and page number. A photocopy of the document, along with the examiner's report, is sent to the cataloging division. This is a typical document after it has been Xeroxed and the examiner's report. To process an item in the document subsystem, the cataloger keys in CODS, the function add to initiate the record, and the volume and page number of the document. This is what the blank screen looks like when the cataloger calls it up for documents. As in the monograph subsystem, document functions include cat and rev, or catalog, update, and revise. Documents with no titles or with a single title are completed in the revise function and the record is cleared. Documents with more than one title, which can range from 2 to 10,000, have the additional functions of EXT and REW. Extra titles are added after editing by typists. This is an example of a document that has more than one title. It has already been completed by the typists. It has in fact 257 titles, and all of them are indexed. And it goes on. For multiple title documents, the end function is review, a final check for accuracy of the basic record and the additional titles. The final completed card looks very much like this. It has document in the corner of it. And these are the only things that are generated by the document subsystem. They do not have a card catalog printed in book form. The current cataloging system generates a variety of products, including cards, hard copy, which is printouts, and online information. All entries cataloged since the beginning of 1978 can be retrieved via computer terminal by requesting the record using its registration number. This is called the history file. Processing for these records has been completed and they can only be changed by catalog editors. The first hard copy generated by the monograph subsystem is the weekly review list. After a record is revised, it is printed on this list in registration number order, separated according to reviser. This printout is used in lieu of reviewing all records on screen. Records from this list can be changed or updated online by reviewers before the cards go into production. 1 week after a record appears on the review list, it will automatically go into the history file. The Serial Subsystem generates lists of registration numbers, titles, and claimant names. Catalog cards are generated in sets according to how many index terms or access points are requested by the cataloger. These cards are automatically alphabetized by the computer on a letter-by-letter basis. The cards are manually interfiled by the Records Management Division. Book catalogs, or the catalog of copyright entries, are yet another product of the cataloging division system. The two largest categories, the non-dramatic literary works and the performing arts catalogs, are divided into and published quarterly. The others are biannual. There are serials, motion pictures, visual arts, maps, sound recordings, and renewals. This is a 6-month version of the former books catalog for 1975, the second part, and its index. Each editor is responsible for editing one or more of these categories. The printed catalogs begin with computer printouts divided by titles and claimant and author index. This big stack over here is the current literary proof for July through September 1978. This entire stack there. The printed After editing for consistency and accuracy, a small printout called a mini proof is generated. The mini lists only entries which have changed from the original proof, and this is the literary mini for January through March 1978, much smaller. The final printout is generated as clear camera copy. This is sent to the government printing office where it is filmed, reduced in size, and bound into paper-covered volumes. And this is what the proof looks like when it's ready for the cameras. Until recently, all volumes were bound in blue-colored paper. From now on, beginning with 1978, each of the 8 designations will be color-coded to make access easier.